You can have perfect lighting, strong composition, and a great subject, but if the color is off, the entire image falls apart. Let me show you. This is the original image, and this is the same image after editing. The difference is obvious, but now look at this version, where the editing is done poorly. So instead of just talking about it in theory, let's break down what actually makes color grading look cinematic. Before you start editing, take a moment to actually understand the image. Ask yourself, what is the main subject? What is the story or emotion behind the image? What color tones would express that best? In this example, the subject is a person in the center of the frame. Although in cinematic photography, the subject doesn't have to be a person, it can be a space, an object, or even emptiness itself. At first glance, it looks like a woman sitting by the window is the subject, but if you look closer, there is a second layer, the reflection of her face next to her. This image feels quiet, introspective, maybe even melancholic. The pose, the shadowed face, and the stillness all suggest isolation or self-reflection. So now you know that edit should not make this image vibrant or energetic. Now, let's look at what's already there. Soft daylight from the window, muted background, warm skin tones, deep shadows covering most of the body. So there is already a natural contrast and it's the foundation. Nothing should feel out of place or louder than the emotion itself. What matters is not what the subject is, but what it communicates. From there, your job in editing is to bring everything into the same visual language. So the colors, light, and contrast all support that one idea instead of competing with it. When you are shooting, you collect options. When you are editing, you make decisions. You guide viewers using a few key tools: light, contrast, sharpness. Light is the strongest one. The eye naturally goes to the brightest area in the frame. So brightness becomes your primary way of defining the subject. In editing, this means you don't just increase exposure globally, you shape it. You might leave the exposure on the subject slightly while lowering it in the background, so the viewer lands exactly where you want. Contrast defines separation. It's not just about making the image pop, it's about creating differences between elements. High contrast in the subject area makes it feel more present and dimensional, while lower contrast in the background pushes it away. In practice, this often means edit contrast selectively, not everywhere at once. Sharpness controls focus. We instinctively look at what's most defined. If everything in the image is equally sharp, nothing stands out. That's why in editing it's often useful to keep the subject crisp while slightly softening the background. Together, these three elements shape visual hierarchy. Brightness pulls the eye, contrast separates elements, sharpness defines what matters. You can reinforce all of this with color. A subject that is slightly warmer or more saturated than its surroundings will naturally stand out, even before the viewer consciously understands why. The key idea is that these tools shouldn't be applied globally. They should be used selectively to guide attention and support the structure of the image. Color grading isn't about applying a trendy look. It's about making deliberate choices that support the image. A common mistake is copying cinematic styles without understanding why they work. This often leads to colors that look forced or disconnected from the scene. Instead, good color grading starts with control. That usually means controlled color palettes, controlled contrast, and the consistency across the image. But color grading doesn't just organize the image, it defines how the image feels. The same photo can carry completely different emotions depending on how it's graded. You shape that mood through combination of color, light, and contrast. Lower exposure and deeper shadows often show tension. Soft contrast and warmer tones, nostalgia. High contrast and cooler tones, intensity. Even small changes can shift the perception of the scene. A slightly warmer tone can make an image feel more intimate, while a cooler, desaturated look can create emotional distance. Another important part of grading is knowing what to remove. Uncontrolled colors like a bright green or blue in the background can distract from the subject and break the visual consistency. Desaturating or shifting those tones helps keep the focus where it should be. In the end, good color grading isn't about adding more style. It's about clarifying the mood and reducing distractions so the image feels intentional. If you want to speed up the process, this is exactly why I created my cinematic preset pack. Not as a one-click look, but as a starting point that already builds controlled color palettes, subject separation, and balanced contrast. So instead of guessing where to begin, you're working from a base that already follows these principles and then adjusting it to your image. Cinematic editing isn't about making your images look more complex. It's about making them more intentional. So the moment you start controlling light, color, and contrast with purpose, the image stops being just a photo and starts feeling like a scene.